Most of us remember Road Rash as a motorcycle racing game from the 90s. But was it really? In Road Rash, you weren't just trying to win races, you were kicking other riders, swinging chains at them, running from police, crashing into oncoming traffic. Road Rash was not just selling speed, it was selling edgy 90s style rebellion. It was one of the first games that let players behave badly in a semi realistic setting. And that fantasy became massively popular as other games kept building on it to great success. So, why did one of the first games to bring chaos to the masses completely disappear? It may just seem that Road Rash died because EA stopped caring about the franchise, but the opposite is true. EA stopped caring because the franchise lost its unique value. In the early 90s, Road Rash stood out because there were far less games built around antisocial behavior than there are now. Most racing games of the era were simply about coming in first, and if there were combat elements involved, they were generally PG rated. Road Rash was different. It let you smash your fellow riders upside the head in the middle of a race, even if that rider was Johnny Law. That gave the series a unique identity. But uniqueness only matters until someone offers a bigger version of the same fantasy. Road Rash let players break the rules of a race. That was the real problem, because once you give players a concept they enjoy, like breaking the rules, they will always want a bigger and better version of it. Road Rash thrived because it arrived before open world chaos became normal. On the Genesis, the idea of punching other riders during a race felt extreme. The series mixed speed, combat, police chases, and attitude into something that felt dangerous. Then the 3DO version pushed it even further. It had live-action cutscenes, digitized riders, licensed grunge music, the kind of soundtrack that makes you feel underdressed if you're not wearing flannel. This all contributed to an even more aggressive tone. Road Rash didn't feel sporty. It felt criminal. But today, it feels quaint because the market changed fast. By the late 90s, players had access to games with more vehicles, more weapons, more freedom. For instance, Driver let players experience cinematic car chases. Crazy Taxi let players drive recklessly through traffic. And then GTA arrived on the PS2 in 2001. At that point, Road Rash's rebellion fantasy no longer felt dangerous. It felt tiny. Road Rash was built around controlled rebellion. The game let players feel reckless, but only inside a very narrow guardrail. You stayed on a fixed track, you fought a limited number of riders, you dealt with police in simple ways. That worked in the early 90s because almost every game was narrow. Hardware limitations forced developers to develop around one core fantasy at a time. In 1991, race motorcycles and smack other riders was enough. By the late 90s and early 2000s, it simply wasn't. Players no longer wanted one fantasy, they wanted multiple fantasies stacked together. Not just drive and fight, but drive, fight, explore, escape police, steal vehicles, cause destruction. Road Rash wasn't built for that. Its entire appeal came from letting players behave badly inside a tightly controlled system. The moment other games started offering unrestricted bad behavior, Road Rash lost its reason to exist. Now, GTA 3, as we already mentioned, was the clearest example of this. It let players steal vehicles, commit crimes, cause crashes, evade police, explore an entire city. You could create your own unique brand of chaos and rebellion. Road Rash couldn't compete with that because its structure was just too rigid. Road Rash had already lived up to the potential of what it was designed to do. That's why later Road Rash games started to feel directionless. They were trying to preserve a fantasy that had already been absorbed by bigger genres. So the Road Rash series didn't die when it stopped selling. It died when players changed their expectation of what chaos and rebellion should look like. At one time, this series gave players a fantasy they couldn't get anywhere else. But as other genres expanded into more open worlds, Road Rash simply couldn't keep up. Its combat was more limited, its worlds obviously smaller, its freedom was narrower. Meanwhile, other games were turning chaos into a sandbox. Players no longer wanted to carve a path of bad behavior through a single race. They wanted to carve a path of bad behavior through an entire city. Simply put, the standard had changed. Road Rash was no longer competing with racing games, it was competing with open world games, and that was a fight it could never win. Of course, Road Rash was not the only series this happened to. It's happened to a number of similar game series. We mentioned Driver earlier. It lost its uniqueness because open world games absorb cinematic chases. Crazy Taxi lost its uniqueness because of basically the same reason. Twisted Metal lost its uniqueness because other games absorbed vehicle combat and destruction. A lot of these focused genres lost relevance once open world games started combining multiple elements into one package. It's kind of like going from a vending machine to an all-you-can-eat buffet. Open world games were not just a new genre, they were genre predators. They consumed the best parts of these older series and turned them into features. Road Rash stopped feeling rebellious the moment other games gave players bigger and better ways to rebel. In retrospect, people remember Road Rash as a franchise EA abandoned, but by the time EA moved on, the market already had. Road Rash was simply built for a different era, an era where one dangerous idea was enough. Race motorcycles, fight other riders, run from police, cause chaos. In the early 90s, that was awesome. Road Rash gave players something they could not get anywhere else. That's why people still remember it. The problem is that the industry changed. Players stopped looking for one fantasy at a time. They wanted games that could combine 5 fantasies into one experience. Road Rash never learned how to become that kind of game, and maybe it never could have been. But that doesn't make it a failure. It makes it one of the clearest examples of a game that changed the industry, only to be replaced when the industry changed the game. So I want to hear what you think. Would Road Rash still work today if somebody brought it back exactly as it was, or would it need to become something much bigger just to survive? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, happy gaming, my friends.